You can be sitting right next to someone who loves you and still feel like they don't see you, not in the dramatic way, not in the way that ends a relationship, in a quieter way, a way that's hard to name, harder to explain, and almost impossible to bring up without sounding ungrateful, because the person across from you is kind, they care, they show up, and yet there's a part of you they've never actually met, a whole interior world that lives just behind your eyes. And somehow, no matter how close you get, it stays unseen. If that feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And there's a real reason this happens to INFJs more than almost any other type. The feeling has a name, even if no one's ever offered it to you. It's called relational invisibility, not loneliness. You can feel it surrounded by people who love you. Not rejection. No one is pushing you away. It's the specific ache of being known on the surface and unknown underneath, of being loved for the version of you that's easiest to access, while the deeper version waits quietly for someone to ask the right question. And here's what makes it so disorienting for INFJs. You're not hiding. You're not playing a role. You're not being fake. You're just being received at a depth that doesn't match the depth you actually live at. To understand why this happens, it helps to look at how your mind is actually built. Carl Jung, who first mapped the cognitive functions that MBTI is based on, described introverted intuition, the dominant function of the INFJ, as a kind of inner perception. It's not thinking in words. It's not reacting to what's in front of you. It's an ongoing, mostly silent process of synthesizing patterns, meanings, futures, undercurrents, a constant low hum of insight that happens underneath the conversation, not inside it, which means most of what you experience in any given moment is never spoken out loud, not because you're withholding, but because there are no words for it yet, or the words exist, but the moment isn't right, or the person you're with wouldn't quite know what to do with it. So you translate. You take the swirling, layered, multidimensional thing happening inside you, and you find a version of it small enough to fit into a sentence, a version that won't overwhelm, a version that fits the conversation, a version the other person can hold, and that version is real, but it's not the whole thing. This is the first reason INFJs feel invisible, even in close relationships. You are constantly translating yourself down, not because anyone asked you to, but because you're aware, almost too aware, of what the other person can receive. You sense their bandwidth, their mood, their current capacity, and you adjust automatically, quietly, sometimes without even noticing you're doing it. The cost is small in any single moment, but over months, over years, the gap between what you actually experience and what you actually share becomes its own kind of solitude. The psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent decades researching loneliness, made a distinction that matters here. He found that loneliness isn't about how many people are in your life. It's about the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. You can be surrounded and still lonely. You can be in a loving marriage and still lonely, because loneliness, at its core, is a felt absence of being understood at the level you actually live at. For INFJs, that level is unusually deep. You don't just want to be liked. You don't even just want to be loved. You want to be recognized. You want someone to see the pattern beneath the behavior. the reason beneath the reaction, the longing beneath the calm. And that kind of recognition is rare, not because the people in your life are shallow, but because most people aren't built to perceive what isn't said. There's a second layer to this, and it's important. INFJs are extraordinary at seeing others. Your auxiliary function, extroverted feeling, makes you exquisitely attuned to the emotional weather of the people around you. You pick up on tone shifts, micro expressions, the thing they didn't quite say. You often understand people better than they understand themselves, which sets up a quiet asymmetry. You see them at a depth they're not seeing you, and because you see them so clearly, you assume somewhere underneath that they must be seeing you too, that this kind of perception goes both ways, that love means mutual recognition, but perception isn't symmetrical. Most people experience love as warmth, presence, loyalty, shared time. They love you fully through their own way of loving. It's just that their way of loving doesn't always involve the kind of deep mirroring that would make you feel seen the way you see them. So you can be deeply loved and still feel invisible. Both things, true at once. And here's where it gets quietly painful, because if you've felt this for a long time, you may have started to wonder if something is wrong with you, if you're asking for too much, if your need to be unknown is somehow excessive, unrealistic, childish even. It isn't. The need to be witnessed at depth is not a flaw of the INFJ design. It is built into the design. Your inner world is large, layered, and continuously generating meaning. Of course, you long for someone to enter it with you. That longing isn't neediness. It's coherence. It's the natural reach of a mind that lives mostly inward, looking for a place where its inwardness can be shared. So what do you do with this? Not fix it. There's nothing to fix. But maybe, slowly, you can let yourself stop translating quite so much. Not all at once. Not with everyone. But with the people who have shown you, in small ways, that they can hold more than you've been giving them. The ones who ask the second question. The ones who sit in silence without filling it. The ones whose attention doesn't flinch when you say something true. Give them a little more of the unedited version, a sentence longer than you usually allow yourself, a feeling you'd normally fold away, a thought you'd normally call too much. Some of them won't know what to do with it. That's okay. That's information. But some of them, maybe just one or two, will lean in. And in that leaning in, you'll feel something shift, a small thread of recognition, the quiet sense that in this moment, with this person, the version of you that's being received is closer to the version of you that's actually here. That's what being seen feels like for an INFJ, not a flood, not a revelation, just a small, steady moment where the gap closes, where the inner you and the outer you stand in the same room, where you don't have to translate. You're not invisible. You've just been carrying more of yourself alone than most people will ever realize. And the longing to be met at that depth, it isn't a problem to solve. It's a sign that you know what real connection actually is. If this gave you language for something you've carried quietly, you're welcome to stay a while. Subscribe if you'd like more reflections like this one. A quiet place for deep minds.